What up, what up? It's the Lupos, Transformational Living. We are talking today about karma. So you've heard the phrase, karma's a bitch. You may have even said it yourself. I know I have said it myself about certain situations when I've had something.
What comes around goes around.
What comes around goes around, and what that implies when we say that oftentimes is we're kind of almost wishing, without realizing it, wishing harm on someone else or wishing revenge on somebody when we feel we've been wronged, or we feel that someone deserves, to get something back for what they've done. A payback. And it has this negative connotation, right? Like the karma, the law of cause and effect is an actual universal law. It's not always considered a bad thing, right? There's good karma and there's bad karma.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times
what you put out in the world is what you at some point and
get back.
It may not be from the same person or in the same situation, but it does come back to you. So I mean, and we had a quote on our Instagram page, which is, how people treat you is their karma. How you react is yours.
Your karma.
So basically, treat people how you want to be treated, but if somebody does something to you that, from what I've learned, send them nothing but love, compassion, and forgiveness, right? Which is obviously harder to do than it seems, and it's taken me a long time to allow that to happen.
Easier said than done.
Much easier said than done. And
it's a practice.
It's a practice, but it takes kind of looking inside to really be able to do that, because it's not something that a lot of times our ego, we always go back to ego, because what we're learning about this whole situation is everyone's got a spirit or a soul or their true self, whatever you want to call it, and everyone's got an ego. And a lot of times, our ego doesn't show up until we get to a certain age, and before that, it's our spirit is what more or less guides us, or our soul or our true self. When our ego shows up, it starts to make decisions for us, and sometimes it is the protector. And so if you're subjected to a situation that's unfair or painful or hurtful or whatever, at some point your ego steps up to put up defenses, mount defenses, whether it's fight or whatever it is. So we have to more or less learn to check the ego, check that ego at the door is a quote I love. And I think when we learn to check it, we're able to kind of look inside and be led more by our true self.
Our spirit.
So
as an example, ego says someone does something to you that you feel is wrong or unfair or mean or malicious or whatever. And ego says,
Karma's
a bitch, dude. It's coming back at you. Or you might say to yourself, he's got some karma coming back to him or her, right? And we say that with that ego, that bravado,
You're
that whole thing, right?
You're saying it because you want that person to experience the same pain that you did, so there's a payback. But unfortunately, the way it works, the way it should work, is that person's going to get that back at some point, and it shouldn't be from you. We're not responsible.
The universe has a way, the law of cause and effect operates in that way. So going back to what ego says and what spirit says, ego says karma's a bitch, you got something coming to you. Spirit says, I send you love and compassion
and
forgiveness, and I have faith and I have certainty in the law of cause and effect, knowing that what the harm that this person has done, or if they in fact had really done something that was malicious or hurtful or painful or whatever,
it's due to what they have going on in their life, and so the lesson is there for them.
And the lesson is going to come. We each are going to receive lessons. It's how the universal laws work, right? So it's not a matter of wishing harm on someone or wanting revenge on someone. It's a matter of having faith and knowing that people are going to learn from their own experiences at some point, because that's how the law works. And so it doesn't mean that you want them to feel pain.
You may at some point initially.
Your ego may.
Your ego may, right.
But it can mean that you can kind of take a deep breath out, knowing that it's not your job to show that person the mirror. It's not your job to say, you did this, you shouldn't have done this, you're going to learn from this. That's not our job. Our job is to have faith in knowing that they're going to learn, and they're going to learn in a much more beautiful way, because it's going to come in the form of a beautiful lesson that's going to open up an opportunity for them, and it's going to teach them.
So a practical or real world example would be, and I always use driving. And so driving for me has been a challenge of me since I was driving, 17 years old, 16, whatever it was. And so somebody cuts you off. And so the old me,
The ego.
the ego, would want to get back and cut that person right back off and do it again, do it to them. You know, what I've learned is it may or may not have been intentional. Usually when someone cuts in front of you, they're just trying to get somewhere. Yeah, there's times where somebody might do something completely careless and whatever, but that's not an invitation or validation or justification for you to do it back to them. It just isn't, and there's nothing good ever comes from that. And one, you can cause an accident. Two, even though they almost did, it's not your job to enforce the laws of the road or the laws of the universe. And unfortunately, at some point, that person probably will have an accident because of what they did. And so let them learn that on their own terms.
Yep.
And you have to live and let live in that regard. And so I've learned to not take that personally. One thing that we do as humans, sometimes when people do something to us, we are wounded, we are hurt, and we take it personally, and our ego, as I mentioned, will step up and want to get back. And we have to be the bigger person and basically step up and say, bless and release. I send you love, compassion, and forgiveness, and let the universe take care of the rest.
And pray that they don't bring harm upon themselves,
or anybody else.
Or anybody else. But knowing that the way that the world works and the way that the laws work, it's not up to us, like I said, to decide that. It's up to the sources that be, right, to decide what the lesson is.
And the other thing is, we are speaking from experience. We're not just barking out stuff that we have lived by for the rest of our life. We have been the people who want to wish people harm. We have said what comes around goes around, karma's a bitch, and whatever. We have done that. We have been that. And what we're realizing is that's not the way.
Yep.
That is not the way to do it.
And the only way you can, really, the way that you can teach this stuff and inspire other people and teach other people is from experience, right? A lot of great thought leaders and motivational speakers and the people that we look to for inspiration, and we watch them on YouTube, and all of those people at one point have gone through something in their life that they're now teaching.
And then so we're sharing.
Yeah, and it's a matter of paying it forward.
We're sharing what we've experienced in our life, so we have life experience, and we're sharing what we've learned at this point in time, that there's a better way. And
how we interpret some of the things, some of the teachings, because so there's a book that we've read called A Happy Pocket Full of Money, and it's really not just about money. It's all about really the universal laws. It's about abundance. It's about, quantum physics and so many cause and effect, all of the laws. And there are many people in our life who we would love to share the wisdom of that book, but it's written in such a way that some people would never open the book because they would read it and they go, I don't understand this stuff. It's too crazy. So how can we reinterpret that and in these little snippets of videos and say, hey, here's a soundbite from the cause and effect, universal law of cause and effect, and here's how we interpret it, and here's how it applies in our life, and here's how you can apply it in your life.
Here's what we did wrong, and here's the lesson we learned, and here's our teaching to you, and we're basically sharing that with you guys.
Repurposing information. I mean, think about all of the great people that you follow who you hear messages from about living your best life, about turning your life around, transforming your life, any type of motivational stuff. It's really, if you chunk it down, they're all saying the same thing. They're just saying it in a different way. And some people are going to resonate with this way. Some people are going to resonate with this way. So all we're doing is repurposing this information that's out there for anybody to learn and saying, here's a way that you might interpret it or you might receive it.
And when there's learning involved, what does that mean? When there's learning involved, that means that there's habits involved. And when there's habits involved, that means there's mindsets involved. And the mindset that is typically involved in teaching things or learning things, actually, and then living by that and doing it automatically, again, is the habitual mind or the subconscious.